Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Hi. Can I ask from the people here who has heard about Rails before? You don't count. No one has heard about Rails before. Okay, that's gonna be good then. So I'm Alex Bulow. I'm one of the co-founders at Parfin, and Parfin is the core developer of Rails. Okay. Now, what is the mission of Rails? We are trying to create a system where we can bring the 6 billion users and the $100 trillion of liquidity that currently exists in TradFi onto on-chain, so DeFi, protocols, and so on. Now, talking a little bit about, I said I'm from Parfin, right? I'm a co-founder at Parfin, and I'm talking about Rails. And why is this? It's because Parfin is the core contributor of Rails. I don't know if you are familiar with this, but in the crypto world, it is very common for you to have a foundation set up that issues tokens, and then you have a separate company which develops the protocol. This is done for regulatory security reasons. In the case of Parfin, the company I co-founded, just some numbers. We're about 80 people or so. It changes, every month. We have offices in the UK, London, Brazil, and Portugal. We have raised over $35 million in VC capital from some of the, you probably recognize some of these, our investors. So we are very happy with that. And we have other products in the company too. So Rails is one of the main things we do, but we have other products as well. This is, and I'm proud to mention this, because apart from myself and my co-founder, Marcos came from BTG Pactual, which is the largest investment bank in Latin America. I am more like a techie guy. I'm the CTO of the company. But we also have some very nice people here. We have Jacob, who's sitting here actually. Jacob, he came from JP Morgan, State Street, Intel. Peter came from R3 Corda. Mario worked with David Chaum. For those that are from crypto, David Chaum is a big name in cryptography. So we managed to get these like high-profile people in the company. And the other thing is like in our company, I would say like 70% of the senior management came from banks. And so the reason I mentioned this is because if you work with financial institutions, you speak a different language. And if you don't come from this world, it's difficult to talk the same language. Okay, so what is the challenge? Sorry. It doesn't like to go back. Okay. So the challenge is this. Blockchains have existed for a long time, 15 years now. And then people ask me, how many banks are actually using blockchain? Not many. I mean, especially public chains. We have seen this many times before. There's a POC that launches a pilot or something, but in the end it kind of dies. Or maybe there's like a private chain, that is launched and they use it for like a couple of years and then it dies, right? So there's not many real use case today on chain. One exception to this now seems to be stablecoins. People are using stablecoins now since the change in direction from the Trump administration. There's a lot of real use case of stablecoins. Even in Parfin, we see this in Brazil. We are helping some of the large banks. They are now doing cross-border FX transactions using stablecoins like Tether, USDC, instead of using SWIFT. They still register the FX with the government, but they use different payment channels. But we believe there's a huge opportunity in tokenization. So stablecoins is one use case, but tokenization is another huge opportunity that we've been talking for a long time, but it seems like it never comes to fruition. Okay, so what is the problem why did we create Rails? The reason we created Rails is because we are trying to merge these two worlds. I just saw that merge is very similar to what is written here. We are trying to combine the traditional financial world with the on-chain world. And bringing these billions of users and liquidity, and really combine. We don't think one will replace the other. It's really a combination of the two working together better. And the way we do this, I mentioned that there's been many attempts of doing kind of permission chains, private chains, and public chains. But our view is that these two things have to be done together. So what Rails is a combination of permission chains that banks install on-prem with a public chain. And so in this way, the banks, and by the way, when I say banks, I mean financial institutions in general. I'm using the word banks just to make it easy, but if you look at our clients, they are like FMIs and central banks and credit card acquirers, not just banks. So here's a sample of some of the clients we've been working with. It's a little bit outdated now, but that we have clients in all stages of a pilot, a proof of concept, and even in production. And this, I think, is something that Rails has, which is quite unique. We are about to launch our token, right? Because as I said, we are combining the DeFi world with the traditional finance world. So we do have a token. It's coming online end of this month. And one of the things that is really cool is that Nuclea, which you see there, and Cielo, they are already revenue generating for us, even though we don't even have a token yet. This is very rare, because most of the projects in crypto, what they do is they launch the token to then develop the system. We are already generating revenue before we even have the token, because our view is we need to build like a solid business. We want to build something that really generates actual revenue, fiat money coming in and circulating like a flywheel for everyone, for the banks and for the crypto users. So, I don't have to say this, but we're talking about huge numbers here. These numbers, they vary depending on the source you look at. But here's one example, is $22 billion in RWA already on chain. Estimates by the end of the year, this is going to grow exponentially. And the potential is huge. It's trillions of dollars that can be tokenized and then put on chain and then do all sorts of things with programmability of smart contracts. So, and why, I keep talking about Rails, why is Rails, different, and what are the things that Rails brings to the table? So, like I mentioned before, our team is made of ex-bankers, and I think this actually does make a huge difference. Many times when we are talking to clients and we see, other, let's say, competitors that they don't have this banking background. I don't have a banking background, my partners, they all have. That the conversation goes much better because they're talking the same language. And also we have this, like I mentioned, the components of Rails. One part, and I'll explain this a little bit more detail, but we have the privacy node. There's a huge focus for us in 4 things that we learned from banks. Before we developed Rails, we went on and interviewed banks like JP Morgan, Santander, banks in Brazil, banks in all Latin America. And one of the things we learned are banks want EVM standards, so Ethereum virtual machine, so they want to be compatible with Ethereum, because then you can create the tokens, ERC20, ERC721, and all those things. They want scalability, because a lot of the solutions are too slow. So you install it and you can't do things because it's too slow, and it doesn't scale. They want interoperability, so this goes back to the EVM point, because you can create a token here and transfer to Ethereum, transfer to Avalanche, or transfer to Arbitrum, because they all use the same standard. And very importantly, privacy. And this is a major one, because without privacy, you cannot do banking. If your competitors can see all the transactions you're doing, then they can front run you. If people can see the balances and transfers of all your clients, then you don't have bank secrecy. So privacy is a problem because it's not easy to solve. Because blockchains, they have been built for transparency. And now we're here saying, we want to put privacy. So we developed this algorithm, this protocol called Enigma, that uses something called zero-knowledge technology, snarks, and it allows the transactions to be obscured. So when you send a transaction, anyone looking at the blockchain can see that a transaction happened, but they don't see who it is from, where did it go to, how much was it. They see nothing. And this is something that we did work with JP Morgan on this, and there's a report called the EPIC report, you can check online, issued by JP Morgan, that explains how this works. And then we have a bunch of services that, again, because a lot of the people came from banks, we know what banks need. So governance, the way that, for example, even in this privacy protocol, we allow regulators to peek into transactions as a view key. This is quite unique, because usually when you do privacy, you mean full privacy. But in a regulated world, this is difficult, because a regulator needs to be able to look at it. And so we have all of these little things that from the surface they don't seem like much, but when you're dealing with financial institutions, this makes all the difference. Okay, so some of the other things, I'm not going to read all of them, but we try to make it very easy for developers to use it. For example, the privacy node I mentioned, it is basically a blockchain that banks install on-prem. Okay, But why is it so different? It's because the way that most banks operate is that they are like ISO 27001 or SOC 2 Type 2 compliant. And so they need things like disaster recovery, high availability. And if you go to an IT department with a blockchain, they're going to say, oh my gosh, what is this? It's like there's an embedded database. I cannot back this up. And so we built our privacy node in a way. It is all EVM, but it is like an application that connects to an enterprise-grade database. And so for the bank, this is, the IT department knows exactly how to install it and how to use it. So there's lots of things like this that we take a lot of effort to make sure that the details are correct. And in terms of like, okay, what can we use this for, okay? So we have these 4 use cases. I think the ones that we are paying the most attention to are the first 2. So the first one is about, and this is what's live already. We are tokenizing receivables. So Nuclea, for example, is the biggest financial market infrastructure in the southern hemisphere. They process about $4 trillion in payments per year. And what they're doing is they're tokenizing commercial receivables. So they tokenize the commercial receivables. This goes into like a central depository, and then this can be transferred over to the public chain for investors to purchase. And so they are already doing this 10,000 receivables per week. It's about $100 million so far. They've been in production for almost a year now. The other example that I mentioned, Cielo, is similar, but Cielo is doing tokenization of credit card receivables. So receivables is an amazing use case. The reason is because they pay yield. So the token can be bought by an investor, and the investor gets the yield of the token. And this is really cool. So this is the kind of use case that we want to enable to investors all over the world. And CBDCs, I mean, if you came here last year, we would be talking a lot about CBDCs because we did a lot of work with the Central Bank of Brazil on CBDCs. So we they had these pilots, and it uses Rayls in the pilot. So for privacy and for scalability, that is the system that they were using. We are doing some work with other central banks that I don't think I can mention yet because we don't have the announcements. But it's central banks in Latin America and Europe, basically. The other 2 use cases are things a bit more for the future. It's like institutional DeFi with privacy. Next week, we're going to announce this work we did with Uniswap, where we connected Enigma to Uniswap. And so you can do fully private swaps in Rails. It's really cool. And in terms of like roadmap, just to give you a sense, because I'm talking about a lot of things here, the privacy nodes, the system that banks install on-prem, this is fully functional in production. You can install it tomorrow if you want. The public chain we are launching by the end of this year, because the public chain is the thing that connects everything. And so we're going to do this. We're very focused on this. And then we are building a lot of applications on top of it next year. So we're going to be focused on building application, marketplaces, and all sorts of things. And then from 2027 on, the focus is bringing more and more transactions and clients on chain. Okay, so in terms of how the system actually works, so there's 3 basic components. When I say Rails, I mean these 3 things. So one is the privacy node that I mentioned. So it's the thing that banks install on-prem. It's like a component. It's open source. They install on-prem, and they can start using it. I'm not going to pretend it's easy to install because if you work in banks, you know how hard it is to get anything installed on-prem. But we've done it many times now, so we know what we're doing. The public chain, like I said, coming this year. So the public chain is a full layer 1 EVM public chain that we're in the final stages of development. And the one thing I did not mention is this. When many banks install the privacy node, they can connect to one another and form a private network. We used to call it subnet, but now we changed the name because this name subnet is confusing to people. So we changed it to private network. This is a bit outdated. But the basic concept, and this is, by the way, what we use in the Central Bank of Brazil and other central banks. In the case of Central Bank of Brazil, all the largest banks in the country install the Rails node, and they connect one another through something we call the hub. And this is where all the governance happens. This is where all the privacy is done in the hub. And the hub was controlled by the central bank, of course. Okay, so in terms of, the public chain itself, it's a public chain, EVM chain. We develop our own consensus mechanism, so it's a bit, there's some novelty there. The reason we did it is because of scalability. We want to be fast. And so we have a consensus mechanism that is ready now, which is fast. And we are working with a partner to make a new version middle of next year which could theoretically get us to like hundreds of thousands of transactions per second. There's no requirement for this right now, because I've been in blockchain crypto for many, many years. I've seen many projects launch with the claim that, oh, we are the fastest. It doesn't matter, if you don't have transactions, who cares if you're the fastest or how many transactions per second you can do. So we are focusing on the ability to have this, but doesn't mean that is a requirement right now. This slide, it just shows some of the components that are part of the Rails solution, let's say. So I show those three pieces. Those are the kind of macro pieces of Rails. But there's a lot of things that go inside. There's lots of code and block explorers and governance systems and privacy systems, and there's lots and lots of things. The public chain, of course, it has because it's a public chain, it has gas. If you know public chains, you need to pay transaction fees. The gas of our public chain is a stable coin. Yeah, because this is another thing we learned from our clients is you go to a bank and you say, hey, you are going to pay transaction fees, and it's going to be this token that, first of all, it cannot even hold the token, and second, it changes price every second. And so how can they plan anything like this? So it's much better if the gas fee is a stable coin, and so this is part of the plan. And this is talking about a little bit more about the privacy node. I'm not going to go through all of this. We can, if people are interested, we have a booth over there where people can talk to us, and there's a lot more information. But basically, it's all about developers, making it easy for banks to use it, making it compliant, focusing on privacy. We have a lab where we test performance before we issue a new release of the system. We've become very good in this. Like before there's a new release, we do all sorts of tests to make sure that the new release is better than the previous release. And so we have a team focusing just on this. And like I said before, you can combine a bunch of these nodes to create a private network. And this is just like showing how it is. So for example, you have 4 private nodes from 4 different banks. They all connect through the hub. And then you can ask, okay, what is this hub? This hub is another blockchain. It could be a Rails blockchain. It could even be Hyperledger Besu. It doesn't matter. It could be a public chain. In the case of the Central Bank of Brazil, they already had a Hyperledger Besu installed, so we use it as the hub. But it doesn't have to be Hyperledger Besu. Okay, Enigma is a very complex topic, and we have Mario, our cryptographer. He could be talking here for like hours about this. But the nutshell is that it is based on zero-knowledge technology, snarks, and the way it works is there's a component that is on-chain, which is smart contracts, and what you do is you need to generate proofs and put this on-chain. The proof generation is off-chain, so there's a lot of cryptography, a lot of Circuit and other programming languages, but the thing is, it works quite well, and the cool thing about it is you can batch transactions. So, for example, if Bank A wants to transfer 1,000, do 1,000 transactions to Bank B, they don't have to do one by one. They can batch them all and send 1,000 at once in one transaction through Enigma, and it's all going to be private. It's really cool. Okay, this is a busy slide, but it just shows how we see the ecosystem. Okay, so what you see here is, in the middle, you have the privacy nodes. Imagine each one of these is a different bank, a different financial institution. On the top, you have the public chain. It's just one public chain for many, many private nodes, private chains. And then at the bottom, you have these private networks. Okay, so there's many ways that you can, if you install a privacy node, a Rails privacy node in your bank, you can connect to other privacy nodes, you can connect to the public chain, you can have multiple privacy nodes in your own bank. There's many ways you can configure this depending on the use case. And just to finalize, I spoke about Nuclea, our client, and they become like a very close partner of ours now. And so this is explaining a little bit of what we've done with Nuclea. So like I said, we are tokenizing these commercial receivables. They've been doing it for months now. They're very happy. They're very close to us. In fact, I just came from Singapore in this other conference, Token 2049, and they had someone there, and we were like just discussing things together. But here are some of the systems, like of the reasons. They like Enigma, they like the speed of the network, the scalability. The Rails privacy node can reach 10,000 transactions per second, which in this case, it's relevant. Because there's banks that, for example, Bradesco in Brazil, they issue per day 1,600,000 CBDs. So if you don't have scalability, you can't process this information. And this is another reason why we built Rails the way we did, is you have the privacy node, it has huge capacity of speed and scalability, and the public chain is a bit slower, because public chains, they are slower. Even Ethereum, even Solana, there's a limit on how much they can process information, how much information can be saved in their database. Otherwise, the blockchain becomes too big. And so the approach we have is most of the things happen in the private chain, and what is required goes to the public chain for distribution, for example. Yeah, for marketplaces and for selling. Yeah, so this is, again, similar, explaining something similar. One thing I was going to say here is we're going to launch our token, and it's coming end of this month. But right now, we are doing a private sale. I don't know if you guys know what this is, but we are selling the token ahead of time at a discount. Okay, it's a coincidence. We didn't plan it to happen now, but it's happening now. If you're interested, there's a minimum ticket is $50. It's really easy, and we have raised like in 2 days already more than $3 million. And you can go to our booth, and there's a QR code you scan. It's in Republic, this platform called Republic. You go, you register yourself, they do KYC, and you can buy not as much as you want. There's a limit of 100,000 per person. But yeah, if you like tokens, if you like this kind of investment, then feel free to visit our booth. Is the last one here in this corridor. Thank you so much.